All right, let's get into it. Today, we're basically becoming data detectives. We're going to dive deep into the world of economic numbers, a place that's, absolutely full of clues, but also a ton of misdirection. Our mission? To find the real stories hidden in all that data.
You know how we're just constantly bombarded with economic numbers, right? GDP, inflation, unemployment. But trying to figure out what they actually mean, what the real signal is inside all that chaos, honestly, it's like trying to hear someone whisper something important to you during a full-blown hurricane.
So, yeah, that is the big question, isn't it? How in the world do you tune out a hurricane so you can actually hear the whisper? How do we find that real story? Well, it turns out there's a pretty cool new tool that helps us do exactly that.
Okay, so every investigation starts with a problem. And for a data detective, it's a classic one. You're at a crime scene with way, way too many clues. And most of them are just there to throw you off.
And here it is. This is our crime scene. This jagged, messy line, this is what economic data looks like. It could be monthly retail sales, unemployment figures, you name it. And just look at it. It's chaotic, right? It's almost impossible to tell what's really happening. Is the economy doing better, worse? Who knows? It's just a jumble.
So, to solve a case like this, a good detective knows you first have to figure out what's a real clue and what's just a distraction. In data, we call all those distractions noise. So let's unmask the two biggest culprits behind all this chaos. First up, we've got something called the trend. Think of this as the big, slow-moving current way underneath all the choppy waves on the surface. Is the economy over years and years generally heading up, or is it heading down? It's a really important piece of the puzzle for sure, but it can totally hide what's happening right now. And the second major culprit is seasonality. These are the predictable ups and downs that happen every single year, like clockwork. The best example, of course, is that huge spike in shopping that happens every holiday season. We expect it. It happens every December. So even though it's a huge jump in the data, it's not really new information about the economy's health. It's just the holidays. And here's the bottom line. The real economic signal, the important stuff we actually want to know, is buried deep under these two layers of noise. So our job as data detectives is to carefully, meticulously strip those layers away to finally see what's underneath. Now, economists have had tools to do this for a long, long time. But here's the thing. Those old tools had a pretty big flaw. They're kind of like a detective who uses the exact same investigation method for every single case, no matter what. You see, the old-school methods for getting rid of trend and seasonality, they work on one giant assumption, that these patterns are always the same. They assume the holiday shopping rush is the same size every single year, that the long-term trend grows at the same steady pace, forever. And that's where it all falls apart. I mean, just think about it for a second. Do you think people spend the same amount of money on gifts when the economy is flying high versus when they're scared about losing their jobs in a recession? No way. The real world changes. It's dynamic. But the old tools, they were totally rigid. And this is where our story gets interesting, because a new, much smarter detective has shown up on the scene. It's a technique that actually comes from the world of machine learning, and it's called a decision tree. So what's the big difference? Well, where the old methods were rigid, one-size-fits-all, the decision tree approach is adaptive. It's aware of the context. It doesn't just assume things are always the same. Instead, it starts by asking questions. So how does it interrogate the data? It's actually super clever and surprisingly simple. First, it looks at all the data. Then it asks a really simple question, something like, is the overall unemployment rate high right now? Then it just splits the data into two piles, a yes pile and a no pile. And it just keeps doing that, asking more questions, splitting the data again and again, until it's found all the unique patterns for all the different situations. And this amazing ability to ask questions and adapt its strategy, well, that leads to a huge breakthrough. It's all about the power of what's called conditional analysis. Conditional, that is the magic word here. It really just means that the rules can change depending on the situation. So the way the tool handles that holiday shopping noise can be totally different in a good economy compared to a bad one. It custom tailors its approach based on the context it's seeing in the data. No more one size fits all. Okay, enough with the theory. Let's actually see this thing in action. Remember our messy crime scene data? Well, here is that raw, chaotic line one more time. Now watch. The decision tree gets to work. First, it goes after that seasonality, those predictable wiggles.
But it doesn't just use a sledgehammer, it delicately adapts to the economic climate at every single point in time, smoothing out those wiggles with incredible precision. And just like that, the most obvious noise just vanishes.
And finally, after the decision tree also accounts for that long-term trend, we are left with this, the clear signal, the whisper in the hurricane. This clean line, this is the real story of the economy, with all of that distracting noise stripped away.
So, okay, we cracked the case. We found the hidden signal. But why does any of this actually matter in the real world? Well, the payoff here is huge. This is where our detective story has a real impact on all of us.
How huge? By using these smarter, adaptive tools, we're seeing a potential improvement in our ability to forecast the economy of up to 15%. Now, 15% might not sound like a crazy number, but in the world of economics, where we're talking about trillions of dollars and millions of jobs, believe me, that is a massive, massive leap forward.
So what does getting a clearer signal actually mean for us? Well, it means we can get better forecasts for big things like GDP. It means central banks can make smarter decisions about interest rates. We get deeper insights into why we have booms and busts. And maybe most importantly, it means our governments and businesses can react way faster and smarter when a sudden economic shock hits. And that leaves us with a pretty fascinating question to think about. We finally have a tool that can help us listen, truly listen to what the economy is trying to tell us, without all the static and noise. So now that we can finally hear its true story, what do you think it's going to tell us next?